Next one. After a sip of tea. Am I the asshole for not allowing my siblings at my wedding? My fiance, 30-year-old male, and I, 28-year-old female, are getting married in April of 2023. I am super excited to marry the person I love, and we have both spent a lot of money on this wedding, so it can be the happiest day of our lives. Because of how much money we have spent on our wedding, and because my fiance and I both don't really like kids, we have decided to make our wedding child-free. I was spending the night at my sister's house, and our mother, 54-year-old female, came over to visit. My sister is 25 years old, but even my younger siblings are 12, 10, and 7. Before I tell you what happens, I will say that my little siblings are pretty spoiled by my mother, and they have ruined my cousin's graduation party by screaming and demanding that they open her gifts because it wasn't fair that they didn't get gifts. I was discussing my wedding with my sister when I brought up the fact that it was going to be child-free. My mother laughed and said that she supports my decision because she cannot stand other people's children ruining the wedding. I told my mom that I would help her find childcare for the wedding. She then got serious and asked me what I meant, and I told her that I would be able to help her find childcare for my younger siblings during the wedding. My mother began to freak out at me, yelling about how I needed to invite my siblings to the wedding and that this was a family event. I quoted her on what she said about other kids being annoying during the wedding, and she snapped back at me, saying that it was different because it was her children and my siblings, and how could I be so cruel to them? My sister tried to calm her down, but my mom freaked out even more, saying that she was going to disown me if I didn't invite the rest of my siblings to the wedding. She then stormed out of the house, and she hasn't spoken to me for 5 days. My sister says, well, it's my wedding, I should just invite them so she doesn't have a meltdown. Am I the asshole?
I mean, I've never had a wedding, but my understanding from my friends who have had to plan weddings, there's always family politics in the wedding invites and, you know, the guest list and who even
Who
like
sits where.
who sits where, who's responsible for what. I don't know. So
Yeah.
sounds pretty messy. I don't envy you.
It all sounds like another event to just cause family drama, honestly.
And I've been to weddings where they say child free, like no exceptions, and they're a lot more fun that way.
So is that always respected, like in your experience? Because you've been to quite a few weddings in the last like 5 years.
Yeah. And I mean, if I were ever to have a wedding, I think that would be my preference as well. Just because you don't have to worry about kids screaming or babies screaming, like as you're walking down the aisle or whatever it may be. You don't have to worry about if you have an open bar and if there's like 12-year-olds, you know, trying to sneak around, stuff like that, you know, which could be more serious.
Reasonable concerns. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think it's pretty well respected when people do decide no kids, but it normally is like a blanket statement, like no children.
No kids under
means nobody.
12? Like, or what's...
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on what the bride and the groom want.
What does it say in the invite? Like, it just says no children?
It would just say, no children. And sometimes they'll even frame it in the sense like, no children, enjoy your night out too, like away from your kids, you know, have a good time. You don't have to worry about your kids. Yeah.
And so when you've gone to these weddings, but you also have friends who have kids, they're totally cool with it and fine with leaving their kids. Or the family of the people getting married who might have kids, they don't mind.
I mean, not to my knowledge, but I haven't quizzed them on if their aunt was mad at them or whatever it may be. But yeah, I don't think it's much of an issue.
And again, it's probably like family politics and underlying expectations. There is a double standard, though, that OP brought up when the mother originally was like, yes, I hate kids ruining weddings. And then was like, wait, but not my kids. They have to come. My 7, 10, and 12-year-old.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I've seen where maybe for the ceremony or something, they'll have like a 5-year-old flower girl or ring bearer, whatever it may be. But then the kids are not allowed at the reception later.
So there's an exemption.
So they can do kind of,
child exemption for the ceremony.
It's almost like, you know, let's meet in the middle so the kids can attend the ceremony. If they're supposed to be part of the wedding, then the family feels good about that, right? But then later, kick them to the curb.
I think, like, I'm not a wedding person. You guys know this. We've had a whole podcast about my unpopular opinion that I don't care about marriage. So I don't know if that makes it easier or like worse for me to give input on this, because in some ways I'm more like impartially removed because I don't give a shit. I'm not as emotionally attached to having a wedding, but maybe that's also a bad thing. I don't know. Anyways, my opinion is the people getting married, the marriage is generally about two people who choose to get married. It's up to them, I think, what happens at their wedding, unless their wedding is entirely funded by someone else, in which case that is up to the people's getting married decision to accept funding from an external source. And oftentimes when an external source is funding it, they have certain requirements and asks that they want implemented, which you can kind of understand, just like a research project. When that's being funded by an external source, they have certain requests that they want implemented because they're paying for it.
Yes, so. and I agree. Ultimately, a wedding is supposed to be between two people getting married, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like in this situation, they are funding it themselves. But just, from what I've heard from friends who have had weddings, it's never just about the two people. It's always about the families, like who they want to invite and stuff like that, like business friends or whoever it may be, distant relatives that the couple who's getting married hasn't
seen
ever
in like
met
8 years or never met.
But it's all these like weird family dynamics and politics, really family politics, in order not to upset anyone. So it's never really actually just about the bride and groom, unless, or whatever it may be, the two people getting married, unless they do take a stance and say like, okay, it's about us.
Shut the fuck up, everyone.
Whatever I say goes, which I mean, I would encourage that, but
if I was the person who wanted to get married, that would be me. I'd be like, shut the fuck up, everyone. This is what me and Ben want. Like, this is how it's gonna go. If you're not happy with it, don't come. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
but I do understand what you mean, because you've witnessed a lot of friends go through it, and it's just family politics. And a mother might say, well, I need my friend Doris invited, but you can't invite Leslie over there because they don't get along, because 20 years ago her husband hit on Doris.
And it just seems like sometimes weddings really can be about, it's almost like a big show.
It's
right?
A spectacle.
Yeah. So families want to, whether, they're trying to impress people or whatever it may be. So they want certain people invited, or they also just maybe don't want to hurt someone's feelings, right?
Yeah, I'm an alien in this conversation because I don't understand it. I mean, I understand the human psychology of why people want to have a spectacle and impress and show off. Well, our family has this, and we did this, and we had this many bridesmaids, and we rented this golf course. Like, I can get why people care, but I don't give a shit at all for the spectacle and the drama and the making it all about, let's get 8 hours worth of pictures, so I can frame it and put it above my headboard.
I mean, at the end of the day, nothing against people who do want to get married, but I think you need to remember why you're getting married. It should be about the love that you have between the two people, right? It shouldn't be about the spectacle. But a lot of the times,
you are kind of marrying the family.
Exactly. A lot of the times, that's how it just ends up being.
Yeah. And I know that I'm for sure in the comments, there's going to be people who are like, well, actually, in a family, you must consider A, B, C, D, whatever,
For
because
sure.
whatever. But it's like, we are the exception. I acknowledge we are different than the average. We have the unpopular opinion of not really caring.
And I would also say, depending on, the background and culture of whoever's getting married, like that changes things too, right? So I think in some cultures, a certain person from a certain family member might have a certain like duty or stuff like that. So that could include a child, right? So if the child's not able to do that duty, that could kind of ruin their cultural aspect of things too, right?
Yeah, it's not in our culture, family, or religion to require marriage.
No.
not
for us. No.
Not for me and Jen. Sorry, when I said our, I meant Jen and I.
Yeah.
But it's okay if it's in yours.
Of course. Yeah.